All right. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tony McNeil. I am a community organizer with Faith in the Valley, and I am joined today with some of my partners in good crime, not bad crime, from Legal Aid at Work. This is, I think, our third go round, ladies, right? Where we're having just a monthly afternoon conversation, lifting up some of the issues that legal aid at work actually helps with community members to focus on. So before we get into all the weeds of our conversation today, I'm gonna just have us do a quick popcorn around. We're gonna introduce ourselves, and then I'm going to give you guys just a framework of why it is that we're having this discussion today. So I'm going to popcorn it to Erica. Erica, would you introduce yourself for us?
Sure, thank you, Tony. Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Becker, and I'm a law clerk with Legal Aid at Work on the Gender Equity and LGBTQ rights team. I will pass it to Jessica.
Thank you. Jessica, pronoun she, her. I'm a community organizer with Legal Aid at Work, and I also work in the Gender Equity and LGBTQ program. And I'm joining from Stockton, and I'll pass it over to Nora.
Hi, all. Wonderful to see you all and to be sharing the space with you. My name is Nora Cassidy, and I'm an attorney who has the privilege of working with Erica and Jessica and several other folks at Legal Aid at Work in our Central Valley Workers' Rights Project. And I hail from Modesto. I will pass it to Lexia.
Hi everyone, my name is Lexia. I'm 20 years old. I'm located here in Fresno. I am a domestic violence survivor, and I also run a domestic violence program here for other women like myself here in Fresno. And yeah, I work for a psychiatrist's office. And I'm gonna pass it on over to Liz.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Liz Tyler. I'm an advocate at Valley Crisis Center, and we serve all of Merced County, and that's where I am today in Merced. And I'm excited to have this conversation so that during Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we're not just raising awareness, we're raising an understanding of the protections that survivors have. So I'm really glad we're having this today. Thank you.
Yes. And so I'm surrounded by some fierce women, and I appreciate you all. Once again, my name is Tony McNeil. I'm a community organizer here in the San Joaquin County. I too am a domestic violence survivor, and I'm a survivor of generational domestic violence that goes back as far as the eye can see in my family, actually. Today, we are going to be having a pretty intense conversation surrounding, and I think that it's called, and I know that it was called domestic violence when I was going through it. However, I think that it's changed, right? Don't they say it's called intimate partner? Is it called intimate partner violence or something now?
Yeah, I think both terms totally work. Domestic violence, sometimes people think of it just as intimate partner violence. That's what comes to mind. But it can also be kind of an umbrella term where any violence that's happening in the home or people who are related, sometimes that gets lumped under domestic violence. So I think intimate partner violence is the more specific term.
Mhm.
But so many people, when they hear domestic violence, they are thinking intimate partner violence. So both terms are great, I think.
So one of the things that I want to just start us off with on this, just shaping the conversation. So we wanted to talk about domestic violence, and we wanted to talk about it specifically surrounding what are the rights that we have when it comes to working. Like what protections or rights are there for individuals that are survivors of domestic violence? I found that interesting as a topic because I didn't know that we had any rights when it came to the workforce. Like you guys all nodding your head. Lexia, did you know that you had rights
No, I
when it came?
didn't.
Yeah. So So we know that there are services, that are out
Mhm.
there, and I'm doing this, not like so loosely, but there are services that are out there for those that are dealing with it. But some of the things that we deal with when it comes to coming out of domestic violence, stalking. I don't know, Lexia, what would be some other things that you could think of that we deal with?
Um, Stalking is one. Another one that we may have dealt with could be more so like manipulation, being lied on in certain cases. And when I say
Yes,
being lied
absolutely.
on, is more so with authorities or amongst other people who are on the outside looking in. So the perception on us is turned a different way, as if we're the problem. Another one we possibly could be dealing with is, the physical abuse, not physically being able to do something or emotionally being able to wake up and put on a smile on your face for work.
Mm.
Yeah. So just the physical limitations that you may be exposed to from abuse, from the physical abuse, the emotional and mental, um, just the wearing that has on you,
Mhm.
and then there's of course, yeah, like you said, the branding, slandering,
Mhm.
labeling, bullying. And in my case, there was fear. My supervisors were fearful that, well, it's just not safe, and we want to make sure that our
Mm.
customers are safe, and
Mhm.
and that the environment is safe. And so we just feel like it's not in the best. So we're not firing you, we're just letting you go,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And I say it with a laugh, and it's nervous laughter, because I promise you that it was extremely traumatizing. I know
Mhm.
that there are more. And so even as people are watching, if there are things, that even come to mind, or things that you want to add, please feel free to just drop information or drop that stuff in the comment or the chat, because we can absolutely see it and engage with you as you are dropping that information. But one of the things that I want to do, so just kind of framing it around the work, and there's other areas that we'll go into. Before we go into that, why is this important to you all? Like Liz, Erica, Jessica, Nora. Why is this topic so important?
I can start us off of just in the spirit of the last couple of weeks have been Latina worker equal pay. There's also been Black women equal pay. There's just been Indigenous women equal pay, of just understanding that women already get paid less in the workplace than a cis white man. So even understanding that financially women are impacted that way, and then even knowing that our jobs are kind of the lifeline to our healthcare or our lifeline to accessing housing or accessing food. So I think even the major component of like, unfortunately, we need jobs to be able to survive. So I know having undergoing so much things personally to then that affects your job and then not being able to have support in the job space, I think is very devastating. And I think as someone who has navigated low income, is just I can't imagine having no job and then trying to navigate services or protection. So I think this is a very important issue that tackles
Mm.
again, like women need resources, support, and financial liberation for themselves and their families and their future. So I would say I'm very connected to the reality that this is impacting women in a lot of ways, and also
Mhm.
understanding that domestic violence has impacted my family, again, generationally, and has been a conversation I think has not really talked about, especially in the Latino household. So I think even shining a light or continuing to hear stories and being part of this space is very important.
Jessica, really quick, before we move to the next person, is domestic violence is culturally, is this something that you see a lot of in the Latino community, in this culture?
That's a great question. I think as I study sociology, it's very impactful of just learning toxic masculinity. And there's even a Spanish term, machismo, of understanding that there is a lot of violence that women face, especially I know personally in my household have experienced generationally. So definitely there's a major component of toxic masculinity and how that has impacted a lot of Latinx women in
Mhm.
throughout centuries and throughout
Wow.
borders, honestly.
Wow. And so, anyone else, why is this particular topic, why is it so important to be lifted up to you personally?
I can go next. So, I didn't grow up with domestic violence in my household, or I really didn't understand the problem at all. And I went to college and I majored in women's gender and sexuality studies. And so I became very aware of how power dynamics, power and oppression impact all of our lives. And I got the opportunity to volunteer with Valley Crisis Center over a summer because I was just looking for places in Merced that were working with women.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, that place was Valley Crisis Center, where we're dealing. We help people of all genders, but the vast majority of our clients are women, and so that's where I felt called to start volunteering. And then once you're working with survivors, just seeing how power and oppression plays into their daily lives, the daily violence they're facing, and to see the roadblocks that are blocking them from healing and safety, and just wanting to be a small part of helping them understand what options they have. There's not always a lot of options, but there's always something, some step we can take. And just seeing the bravery of survivors, the vulnerability, the sheer will to make a change in their lives, and to use the resources we do have to create a new path forward for them and their children. It's really been humbling work. And I think that that's just how I didn't have a personal connection, but once you start working with survivors, you do. And you remember all of the survivors you've worked with and how strong that they have been, and how much support they need. Um,
Yeah.
and we hope that our agency is able to just be part of their story.
I really, really respect and appreciate that, especially having gone through some of these services, Liz, and been in safe houses and homeless shelters and different things, and needing legal assistance when it came to just navigating the system of restraining orders and all of that. And this is this so first, can we give a trigger warning? Can we give a trigger warning? Yes, I think that we should have started off with a trigger warning. So we're going to do a trigger warning now that some of this conversation is going to be triggering. And so it could possibly, we are not all sure, but it can get emotional, as we're diving into this dialogue, because it really is, because it really is close to the heart. Does anyone know, just offhand, before we move to the next person, when did partner or spousal abuse even become illegal? Right? It's not been long, to where it was declared like unlawful to beat your spouse. Does anyone know offhand? I'll have to Google it if we don't.
I don't know, but I know that state by state, it was very much a state by state change. And so the last couple of states, it was one of the Dakotas and one of the Carolinas to actually outlaw marital rape. And that was not too long ago, within the last 20 to 30 years. And so it's just this really still, I think, changing, evolving understanding of what a respectful and acceptable, relationship looks like, and the state's responsibility to protect folks and create laws that are equitable. Especially on these issues where when women and non-binary folks are the people who are predominantly the victims, it tends to be that the law is a bit behind on those protections. And so, I don't have the actual date. We should Google it. But
Yeah.
it's not going to be very heartening, I don't think.
Wow. So Nora, why is this important to you?
I think that the reason that I just really wanted to have this discussion in particular, in addition to the fact that this is the time of year where we make an effort to raise awareness about domestic violence, and prevention and the rights that folks have, is that this is one area where in employment law, because I'm a workers' rights attorney, and so I help folks with their rights in the workplace. And generally, the law doesn't understand that people's lives outside of the workplace very much affect their work and their ability to be in the workplace. And this is one notable exception to that, where California has acknowledged that people's lives outside of their 9 to 5 job are very much coming into their work experience, that work is such a huge part of people's lives, and their lives outside of work is also very important, and that these things are is completely intertwined, and that the law has finally recognized that fact, that there are these intersections, and to really have rights in the workplace, you have to take into account something like that somebody is not safe because of a stalking or a threat outside of the workplace. It's now bleeding in, or that because of stress and trauma, somebody needs time off from work, but without the risk of losing their job because their economic needs didn't go away. It's just that they had to prioritize, for instance, their mental or physical health for the moment. Or that even, while at work, people can still do their jobs, but they need to do them in a different way, or they need to do them in a more safe way. And so that this is thankfully an area where the law has actually stepped in and recognized that. And so I just want to let as many people know about that as possible. And so that's why I'm here today.
Thank you so much, and I'm really looking forward to the information that you guys are going to dive into here, the specifics. Erica, I'm going to go to you, and then Lexia, I'm going to come to you next. And so, Erica, why domestic violence? Why is this conversation? I mean, I've been rocking with Nora and Jessica, for a couple of months, and then here comes Erica. So what about this is dear to you?
Yeah, I think domestic violence touches every person. And I think it's just a question of whether we know it or not. But absolutely, we all, either ourselves, our family members, our friends, our coworkers, have or are experiencing domestic violence, or at the very least are experiencing unhealthy relationship behaviors that can, ramp up to more serious physical abuse and violence. And I think we have to acknowledge that that impacts the whole person. As Nora and Jessica have said, that impacts who you are when you're going to work, when you're at family events, when, people are constantly making safety calculations for themselves, understanding how to best keep their partner from getting angry, from going over the edge, keeping themselves and their loved ones safe. And I think, especially with the prevalence of financial abuse for people who are experiencing domestic violence generally, they might not have access to the money that they've made in the past that they are making. And so it's really important to think about that as people are trying to get out of unsafe or unhealthy situations, that it's really important to maintain access to their workplace, both as a means of survival and also as even an out of house or separate network of people that you might actually be able to rely on and do rely on. So I think maintaining that connection is just really essential.
Yeah. Okay, Miss Lexia, I know that this was a little bit nerve-wracking for you. So first, I just want to tell you um, how honored I am that you came into this space today. And we're sharing the space together. So We got one another's back, and it is extremely brave for a 20-year-old to step into space and just publicly share. So, Lexia, come on off of mute, baby, and tell us what about domestic violence? Why is this something that is important to you?
Well, I would like to start off by saying thank you to all of you guys for inviting me and having me. This is a great experience for me to get, and something that I've been noticing in regards to domestic violence is it's very brushed underneath the rug, and a lot of people seem to not even say anything about it or won't even tell anyone because of the embarrassment that they'll feel, the more so being scared also, their partner may be more, and so like don't tell your friends our business, why would you tell your mom that about me and stuff like that, and more worried about the image of, that the image that would be made. And so this is important to me because I've noticed if I would have knew the red flags a lot sooner before getting
Mhm.
involved with someone, that I probably would have left right off the bat. When I was tolerating little things or belittlement and was just thinking it was just anger, but in all reality, it's narcissism. And so, it would be things like that. If I would have educated myself or been educated a lot sooner, I would be able to decipher if this is a situation I want to continue to be involved in. And I feel being young, 20 years old, and having peers along the same age range as me, and, people who may open up to me and say, they're going through similar things. The education aspect of it is what I'm super big on right now, due to the fact that if we educate ourselves, we will know things a lot sooner and be able to decipher what it is right off the bat. And so that's what more so my thing with it is I want to educate everyone, young, older, whoever can be educated about it. And nonetheless, me personally, I want to piggyback right off what Liz said. I was never in a household where domestic violence was projected. I never even knew my parents argued. That's
Mm.
how, disclosed they were. And so for me to go and, become an adult and get involved in that kind of situation was like, how did that happen? And with that being said, it's something our parents don't train us or, teach us while we're in high school or starting to date is, look out for this kind of person or these kind of things in a person. It's kind of something you learn based off experience, or if you educate yourself. And that's why I feel like it's important for me and important for this topic to be brought to light a lot more than what it is.
Mm. Yeah. So, ladies, we're gonna just dive in. Um, so several years ago, when I was I was coming out of domestic violence, um, and as I was coming out of it, I was still trying to work and going through the shelter process and all of that. Highly traumatized, all of my children traumatized, or what have you. And I'll never forget my boss to letting me know that they didn't feel like I had a restraining order. Um, Trigger warning. So I had a restraining order, and my biggest fear was that during that time that he would take my children. Um, and so, I'm going through all of these avenues in order to make sure, that the kids were safe. I didn't even feel at that point it was much about me or what have you. It's just the anger and the rage of, having left and all. There was just so much rage and stuff that was going on. Law enforcement coming into my job, monitoring my phone messages. I was getting phone messages and different things, and taking those things into evidence, literally. Um, but I'll never forget one of the jobs. I had three at the time, just letting me know that they had to let me go. because they wanted to just ensure the overall general safety of the customers. And they didn't feel like they could guarantee my safety and that they couldn't guarantee the safety of the customers should something, violently erupt. Um, were they in their rights, Nora, to do that? Was it legal, you guys, for that to happen?
Yeah, so the law really does protect survivors of domestic violence, and so I'm not sure when this happened compared to when the law changed, but there are, California in particular has some very clear rights of survivors of domestic violence, sexual violence, and stalking. Um, and their rights in the workplace. And so that includes things like having safety-based accommodations in the workplace, and also to not be discriminated against or retaliated against for being a survivor of domestic violence. And I know that Eric and I will be getting into that, and we can start right now. So I just wanted to let you all know that the Legal Aid at Work we're a workers' rights nonprofit. As Jess said, she's in Stockton, I'm in Modesto, and we're particularly focused, the two of us, on serving clients here in the Central Valley through our Central Valley Workers' Rights Project. And so we provide free legal resources, free legal advice, free representation to folks, to our low-wage workers, and who are having issues in the workplace. We support we have a lot of different programs in our office, and one is particularly focused on the workplace rights of survivors. And all of our attorneys, all of our staff represent folks regardless of immigration status. So if you're undocumented, you're documented, does not matter. We're here and eager to help. So we wanted to go over kind of 4 buckets, and that's our helpline there. If you have any questions, it's confidential, it's free. You can give us a call, and Jess or I will answer. You can see our faces. We're not, just nameless people. And we're happy to talk to you and see what we can do to help out. So we have 4 buckets of information that we wanted to go over today. We have accommodations, and so that's things that the employer changes about the workplace to accommodate you as an employee. Time off, protection against discrimination, and income support, because of course, as these things are happening, as we've kind of talked about before, that financial aspect really is quite important. So I'm going to pass it off to Erica to talk a bit about accommodations.
Yeah, thank you, Nora. So everyone has a right to feel safe at work, and survivors and people experiencing domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking are entitled to reasonable safety or disability-related accommodations in the workplace under both California and federal law. And this includes for disability-related accommodations for disabilities that are caused or exacerbated by abuse. So things like post-traumatic stress disorder, for example. And as part of individuals' rights to these accommodations, employers must participate in what's called an interactive process with the employee to determine what type of accommodation is most appropriate. So that basically means that they have to actually have a conversation with the employee to discuss what their specific needs are. And if the employer believes that maybe a requested accommodation is too burdensome or costly, they have to work with the employee to consider alternative options.
And I have a question surrounding that. So, what if they don't know what they need? Or they, I mean, how can they, list? I mean, in the services that you guys provide, and Lexia, with the spaces that you're in and volunteering, are there people that can work with individuals to help them determine what accommodations or how to even create this interactive process?
I've never worked with a survivor on figuring out workplace accommodations like with their employer, but I think that, and Nora and Erica, I know you can speak to this, but common accommodations that I've heard are change in schedule, change in location of work. Like maybe you have several offices, you can go to a new office, but I think schedule change would definitely be a big one. And then making sure that people aren't giving away your information when they call. So even like, hey, tell everyone at this workplace that you're not to give out information about staff members and the staff member schedules, because people who are causing harm will call your work and say, hey, is this person in? I'm her boyfriend or whatever. And so that's a giveaway and it makes you unsafe. So that can be an accommodation, just making sure other staff know that your information needs to be protected. Having a security guard walk someone out to their car. Those are the ones that I've heard of. And I don't know, maybe Nora or Erica could add more that they've helped survivors with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely advocates can help talk through with survivors what their specific needs are. And if you move to the next slide, we actually have a few examples of some of the most common accommodations, which Liz has touched on a number of them.
And I want to make sure I'm going to move us along. I do want to make sure that I note that I've got some case managers and workers that are asking if they can have access to some of this information. So we will, I've got some of you guys' names, and I will make sure that you guys have contact information for Nora and Erica in order to be able to access resources for them directly.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. We can definitely make sure everyone gets this information and also have a lot of fact sheets and different resources on Legal Aid at Work's website as well. But as Liz mentioned, a number of accommodations that are particularly common for safety or disability related accommodations can be changing work telephone or contact information and making that information not available to the general public. There can also be changes such as relocating a workstation or a desk within the physical workplace, modifying someone's schedule and reassigning them to a different shift or even a transfer to a different location if possible. And then there's also a sort of physical security aspect of having an employer install locks, put in surveillance cameras or other equipment that might actually specifically help ensure the safety of the workplace. And then it's not necessarily an accommodation, but I also want to make sure to note that employers are actually able to get what's called a workplace violence restraining order in California on behalf of an employee. So this is different than a personal restraining order that an employee might file for themselves. It's something that the employer actually files for on behalf of the employee, and it prohibits someone from contacting the employee and even their family members, contacting other employees at the workplace, and generally can add just sort of an extra layer of protection, which could be really important. And then to secure, in particular, safety-related accommodations, if you don't mind just going back one slide for a minute, thank you. An employee who wants a safety-related accommodation has to inform the employer that they're a survivor. And we recommend that it can be best to make those requests to an employer in writing. And Legal Aid at Work does have sample letters online that folks are welcome to use. An employer may request certification to prove that an employee is a survivor. So that can include something like a letter from a doctor or an advocate, a police report, a court order, and they can request that the survivor provide recertification every 6 months. But the employer is not allowed to share that information. So any type of certification documents and things they learn from that are confidential. So open to any questions on that segment. Otherwise, I will turn it to Nora for job protected time off.
I do have a question on that because I think that most employers' reaction to being told, I'm dealing with domestic violence and they're going to jump into a lot of personal questions. wanting to know about details. And I wonder what advice you have for survivors of just, obviously survivors deserve privacy. They are not required to disclose everything to an employer. So is there something that you recommend them saying, like, the law just says I need to tell you that I'm a survivor. You can ask for these certifications, but I'm not comfortable discussing anything further, just so they can protect themselves against some of those really unwanted questions from an employer.
Yeah, Liz, I thought that script was great. I mean, I think that just part of it is getting the word out that folks don't have to share their entire life or all of the details to happen to be able to get these protections. It's very natural to be in this conversation with somebody and to kind of feel like, oh, well, maybe I have to keep talking in order for them to work with me and to give me these protections. But that's not true. That isn't what the law requires. The law just, you have to say that you're a survivor, and then an employer can request a certification. They don't have to. And there are a lot of different ways that you can meet that requirement, but none of them are, now you need to provide every detail of what happened. It can be a police report, it can be a restraining order, in the toolkits that we have available for folks that, we can get into the comments, that has a whole list of options that people can use. And I think just sort of pivoting to like, here's my certification, this is what I need, and just kind of reiterating that, just Liz, like you said, is a good option. And if you're feeling pressured or unsure as to what you have to answer or not, please feel free to give us a call, and we'd be happy to chat about it kind of in that particular situation.
I'll also add briefly that for disability-related accommodations, which are available to employees who work somewhere that have more than 15 employees, you do not have to disclose specific medical documents or anything like that, or specific diagnoses in that way. And you don't have to share with coworkers or anything what your disability may be, or that you have one.
I had a question. What if a worker is in a job that has less than 10 employees? What would the protections look like then?
Yeah, this safety-related accommodations apply to all workplaces, no matter the number of employees. It's for potential disability-related accommodations that the number of employees might matter, for determining reasonable accommodations.
Wow. So you know what I'm thinking, and my brain is exploding now because I'm thinking about. So I do. We do faith-based organizing at Faith in the Valley with congregations, and in situations like this, I'm wondering, what protections then would be in place in order. I know that for example, say a member, attends the same church, but then has a restraining order, and maybe serves to some capacity at that church, or is even on a part-time staff, at that congregation, do the same laws apply?
So I'm not sure. Tony, are you saying that?
If they're a staff, the same laws apply, correct?
So these are for employees, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So in terms of like, how does a temporary restraining order work, and what does it, like, what areas does it cover or not? That would be more of a specific kind of, depends on the restraining order. Liz,
Right.
I don't know if you have an idea.
Yeah, I can jump in. So I've seen a few restraining orders, at least one that comes to mind, where they were getting it against a past partner who worked at their job, and they had the 100-yard stay away order, but when they were at work, it was a 10-yard stay away order. So in restraining orders, you can say, like, stay away from me, don't contact me, and don't come to my workplace. You can put don't come to my workplace, except when they actually work there, the court does not have the power to fire anyone. And so what the court will usually do is say, well, at work, you know, how close would you really have to come? Do you work in the same department? Like they kind of go through those questions. And at least the one that I've seen, it's been, okay, then stay 10 yards away or 20 yards away, which is hard for survivors because you don't want to go to work with someone who's abused you. But the court can't fire people. And so that's an example that I have that kind of refers to that situation you're talking about.
And so I think this was actually the perfect time to talk about, like, so what if you can't be at work? You know, what if you know, accommodations are for when you're at the workplace, although an accommodation can be unpaid leave. But so what about job protected time off? And so all Californians all California workers have the right to take time off work to serve on a jury or to testify in court. So for instance, if, you know, a district attorney is prosecuting a batterer, then the domestic violence survivor can take leave from work to testify against the batterer. But there's also a particular protection for survivors of domestic violence, that they can take leave off of work to go to court to get a restraining order. And so that does kick in when an employee informs the employer that they are a survivor. But it can apply to situations like, you know, taking time off work to like attend child support, child custody, divorce court hearing, as long as the point of the hearing is to ensure the health and safety or welfare of the survivor, or their children.
I have a question about the time you can take. So is it only court hearings, or, you know, because restraining orders, you have to fill them out. And like, if you're making an appointment with Valley Crisis Center, you need to come to our appointment or go by phone. Is that time off protected, or is it only the actual court hearing?
You know, it kind of depends on what's happening during that time. And one thing that would kick in perhaps, is to obtain services. And that is way broader. Unfortunately, it only applies if you're working for an employer that has 25 or more employees. But that can include things like going to a shelter, seeking medical attention, having counseling, doing safety planning. And so it is very broad, and that's all job protected time off. And what job protected time off means is that you can leave work and then with notice to your employer. So you leave work, and then when you come back, you get your same or equivalent job back. They can't demote you. They can't, you know, knock you down to part-time or something. It is, you just get to be placed back into the job that you had. So even if you're, you know, at a jury hearing for a few days, like you still get your same job back. And so if people have particular questions about, well, what about this situation, or does this count for protected time off? That's always something that we're happy to talk to people about. And so
can I ask if this time off is paid or unpaid?
So what I'm talking about right now is the right to take the time off. So there are different ways to get pay during that time. So in the law, you kind of consider two different buckets. One is just the right to have the time off and return to your job. And the other is, well, okay, how am I going to get paid during that time? And we have a kind of a nice chart that's kind of helpful for that we can share with folks. But I am also just going to talk briefly about some of the ways to get paid during that time. And so that time can include, as I said, seeking medical attention, getting services from a shelter or a crisis center, getting counseling, relocating, things like that. And so that broader category of time off is for folks who are working at those larger employers, so employers with 25 or more employees. To get paid for that time, you can use vacation time, you can use personal leave time, PTO, but I'll also talk about some other kind of like particular options for folks who might not have a bunch of vacation time, for instance. To get that time off, I did just want to clarify that you do need to provide a reasonable notice to your employer. If you know ahead of time you're going to have to go to court in a couple weeks, you should just let them know as soon as you possibly can. And if it's an emergency and you just, it's happening this very moment and you need the time off, that's fine. Just let your employer know. It just has to be reasonable notice. There isn't some certain, like it has to be at least 2 days or something like that. And all of these certifications that Erica and I have been talking about, those are confidential. So I just wanted to flag that for people. Employers can't be sharing your court order with anybody else. As Tony just kind of flagged the discrimination protection, that is something that I wanted to just flag for people. It kind of came up in Tony's comments earlier of that employer cannot discriminate because of somebody is a victim of domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking. And so the employer has to know that you are a survivor. But once they know, they can't discriminate against you. So they can't retaliate against you for taking this protected time off. They can't retaliate against you for asking for a safety-related accommodation, like what Erica was talking about. They can't, harass you or discriminate against you because you are a survivor of domestic violence. And so if you just skip ahead maybe 1 or 2 slides to the income support, I wanted to delve into Liz's question a little bit more. So in California, you have the right to at least 3 paid sick days, and that's actually per year. And that is a sick day or a safe day. And so that is paid. That is at least 3 days a year of paid time, including for survivors of domestic violence or if you are sick. Unemployment insurance, there's actually, if you have to quit your job because you experienced an act or threat of domestic violence, you have some kind of restraining order or police report or some information that kind of talks about the fact that you are a survivor, and then your job just couldn't be made safe. The leave of absence wasn't working. It wasn't fixing the problem. You couldn't just go to a different location. Maybe there isn't a different location. And so you just had to quit because that was the only way to keep yourself safe. You could very much qualify for unemployment insurance. There's a version of unemployment insurance, particularly for that situation. State disability insurance is for folks who can't work because of a serious health condition. And so, as Erica was mentioning before, maybe somebody is having like an associated mental health crisis or issue associated with them being a survivor, that could very much be qualifying for state disability insurance or paid family medical leave to take care of somebody. I know there's a lot to throw at people. I wanted to really flag the toolkit that we have that goes into this in a lot more depth, provides a ton of like sample letters for each stage in this process, and also just really encourage you to call the number at the bottom of the screen if this is something that you're experiencing and you have questions about how to navigate it.
But I did put all of those toolkits and links in the chat, so they can be found in the chat right now.
Yeah, so just contact us. But I know that Liz was also going to talk about, some resources that are available outside of the workplace, because obviously this is something that can be affecting people 24/7 in and out of work.
Yeah, so I can talk about the resources we have at Valley Crisis Center. So Valley Crisis Center, we're located in Merced, and we serve all of Merced County. We serve people who are affected by intimate partner violence or domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. All of our services are free and confidential. And we serve people of all ages, genders, sexualities, documentation statuses, language, and income levels. So there should be no barrier to service other than the only qualification is that you're a survivor. While we only serve Merced County, there are agencies with similar services throughout the state and really the country. You can find help. To find help near you, you can Google domestic violence and the name of your city. It'll probably pop up with the agency in your area, or you can go to California Partnership to End Domestic Violence, their website, cpedv.org, and click the red Find Help button at the top of the screen. It'll pull up a map that you can look for your location and the service provider nearest you. You can also go to the National Domestic Violence Hotline's website. It's called thehotline.org, and find the local resources tab under their Get Help section. You can also call us or call the national hotline, and we can route you to the service provider nearest you. So I'll talk about our services. These services are very similar to the other services you would get. We all function the same way. All domestic violence agencies are going to have some of the basic services that we have. They may have more outside of it, like different kinds of support groups, different community outreach, but we all have some of the same essential services. So one of those is our 24/7 crisis line. So people can use that if they need help because of domestic violence. So our advocates can help callers learn about their options and create a safety plan. Our crisis line is open to callers who are currently in a domestic violence relationship or who are dealing trauma from past relationships. Callers can remain anonymous if they want to, and they can decline to answer any of our assessment questions. So just know, if you want to call and just have someone to talk to, you can call our crisis line. If you are calling because you need to know specific information about how do I make a report, what are my rights in this situation, you can call for that too. If you want to call to get counseling, call that crisis line. It's 209-756. Sorry, I think I'm messing up our crisis line. 209-722-4357 or 209-722-HELP. That's an easier way to remember it. We also have a web chat. So our web chat is a lot like our crisis line, and it can be helpful for people who don't have the privacy to call our crisis line. So you can talk with an advocate on our web chat by going to rc.chat/BCC, or you can go to our website, valleycrisiscenter.org. If you scroll all the way down, there's a Start a Chat button that you can get connected with an advocate. Our web chat is not 24/7. It's during business hours, so Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Many of our clients either start with a crisis line or they're actually connected with an advocate because they made a police report or they had to go to the hospital because of domestic violence. And one of our advocates was called to the scene. So law enforcement, hospitals, and other community agencies can actually call our advocates when they're dealing with an incident of domestic violence, and we're able to go out and respond day or night. If you're interacting with the police or at the hospital because of domestic violence, you can also request an advocate from Valley Crisis Center. So maybe the officer isn't mentioning it or offering it. You can say, I'd like an advocate to be present, and they'll go ahead and call us. We provide legal advocacy. We talked a little bit about those restraining orders. That's something we can absolutely help with. So we can help clients file for restraining orders against current or past partners who were abusive. We're not lawyers, but our legal advocates can explain the restraining order process, help a client fill out paperwork, and attend court with the client for support. We also have peer counseling services. So right now we're doing one-on-one peer counseling sessions for survivors. Our experienced peer counselors give survivors a safe, judgment-free space to discuss their experiences with abuse. Peer counseling can help survivors process their feelings, explore their options, plan for safety, and develop healthy coping skills. Peer counseling is also available to the survivor's children. We don't have licensed therapists on staff, so we're not able to diagnose, evaluate, or provide treatment to clients. I do know that there are some other agencies, though, that do employ licensed therapists, so you can always check with your local agency to see what their services are. We also have an emergency safe house. So we operate a shelter for survivors and their families who are in danger. individual people can come as well. Single people can come. It's not only families. And while at our shelter, survivors work with the case manager to connect with community resources and find stable housing. Like all of our services, our safe house is open to people of all genders. In order for us to shelter a minor, their guardian must be sheltered with them. So those are kind of the basic services we offer at Valley Crisis Center. And you're going to see that at most agencies in California because we all work from the same group. And if you have questions, you can go ahead and call us. Again, our hotline is 209-722-4357 or 722-HELP. Thanks.
I just have one quick question in regards to the like the time off and stuff. I noticed you guys were saying survivor. So with that being said, does that only pertain to the ones who are no longer in that situation that they were in? Okay, so if you're going through it currently also, then it pertains to you also. Okay.
Very good
Absolutely.
question.
Yeah, great
Yeah.
question. Thanks for raising that. Yes, so the law terms it as like a victim of a crime.
Mm. And so Lexia, I know that there's some work that you're doing in Fresno. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing in Fresno, and how people might be able to get involved with that if they so choose?
Sure, absolutely. First and foremost, I love what Valley Crisis Center is doing. As far as with like the peer counseling and the shelter, the emergency shelter, I think that's very important. And also having someone who they can speak to in terms of how to go about restraining order or things like that. I think I will be getting in contact with you, Liz. Just to have your contact on hand and things like that. But what I'm doing here in Fresno is a domestic violence slash self care, self love group for survivors or whoever is still currently in that situation, but more so are educating themselves on ways they can get out eventually. And so, with that being said, it's been going since I want to say May of this year. We meet every Sunday at 7 o'clock. For about an hour and a half. And I really like it so far. We have these little journals called Today Affirmations, and basically we write in them, and it's about building up what was broken down on us. And so, focusing more so on the emotional aspect of things versus focusing on the trauma that we endured, um, because focusing on the trauma really won't do much but give us flashbacks and trigger us and put us back into that dark stage that we're fighting so hard to stay out of. And so with that being said, I have about 4 or 5 girls. They're different aspects. Some have not been physically abused, but they have been verbally or emotionally abused or financially abused. um some have been, I think honestly all my girls have went to jail for domestic violence. And that really stood out to me because you don't hear too often on, the women that go to jail in regards to domestic violence. But just more so it was focusing on how we were able to allow someone to do us like that, put us in jail. And, we're going to county jail. Some were pregnant, some were not. Some just gave birth. And the things that, us as young women are enduring with these people we are choosing to have relations with, and how hard it is to get out of these kind of situations. And so, right now, me and my girls, we're focusing very much on educating ourselves. And, I feel like that's where you mainly have to start, is where you need to educate yourself. And what I plan on doing next for us is to start with childhood trauma. Go to the core and see what it is that we endured during kids. Did some of us have a father? Did we not? Did we have one parent on drugs? Did we have one parent who worked and went to school and wasn't there? More so, where is it we're having this disconnect from who we are and what we're worth? And while we're accepting the things we're accepting. So that's what I plan to start this next month of November. And I plan to, do big things for my girls, keep this group continuing and to flourish it and reach out to way more people, just not in the Fresno County, but, all over California, hopefully one day.
I think I mean, it's so cool to hear about what you're doing because survivors are powerful people and their stories are powerful. And people want to connect with other people who understand, because so many people you go to talk to, and they don't get it. They haven't been through it. And so to get other survivors in a space and share your experience, share your goals, share what you hope to do in the future. It's so cool. I'm so happy that you're doing that work, and I know that you're helping so many. I did want to comment. You brought up a really great point about why are we saying survivor, right? Versus maybe sometimes we hear victim. And I use both. I use both usually, but survivors just aren't the ones who have left their relationship or done. Survivors of domestic violence, people in relationships currently where they're being abused, survive every day. They're a survivor every single day that they've made it to the end of the day. And so I think that I use survivor even with people who are in current abusive relationships, because they're surviving every day. But yeah, I really thank you for that language choice is important. And sometimes people don't want to be called a survivor because they're not feeling like a survivor that day. They're feeling like the meat of it. And so it's okay to use whatever terminology or no terminology at all to describe the situation you're going through. So thank you for bringing that up.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, so wrapping everything up, but this was a lot of information, you guys, and it was a lot of good information. Really, really good information. I love working with Nora when I'm doing the tech side of this, while you guys are sharing, because you'll drop a resource and then she'll Google it, drop it in the private chat, and I'll drop it in the in the public chat, and so we're just like we're really working things out here. What I want to do is I want to lift up a special space that we're going to be holding next week. So um, next Friday, October the 29th, from 6 p.m. to 7:30. So don't be shocked, Nora, and Jessica, that the time shifted by 30 minutes. 6 to 7:30 p.m. we are holding a private listening session. So this will not be live. This will not be live streamed. This is registration required. And and it's going to be a very private Zoom space. The reason why we're holding it in a Zoom space is because it is an invitation that is extended to individuals that are in Fresno. Some, okay, I don't care where you are. It doesn't matter where you are. If you are a survivor of domestic violence or a service provider for individuals that are survivors, not past tense, present tense survivors, then you are invited to this listening session that we have put together. It is called Your Voice Matters, exposing the gaps. And so, what we're doing is we want to talk about what works and what's not working. We have resources galore, right? All of these services that are there that are working. However, there are some gaps in the systems. And guess what? Ladies, gentlemen, survivors, they won't know what the gaps are if we don't use our voice to express it. Because the people that are doing this work, they care. The people that are doing this work, now this is one area I'm telling you now, it is very rare to find folks that are just collecting dollars to do this work because you don't get paid much at all. If people are doing this work, it's because they care. So I want to make sure that you all know that this is coming up. And it is going to be once again next week. It will be on Friday evening. October the 29th. It is scheduled at 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And so it is a very intimate space that we have put together. I put the registration link in the chat. I will actually share with you. So on, if you look for it on social media, I created an event for it on Facebook that you can find. All you have to do is look up Your Voice Matters, and you should be able to find it right there and then register for it. Um, and so I just want you all to know that that we want to make sure that those that are tapping in register for the event next week. Please share it. Survivors, we need your voices. We need to hear what is working and what's not. We the ladies will be here in that space next week with us as well. So we'll have different breakout rooms that are set up. If you have questions for Nora and Erica, there's going to be a legal room that is set up that is specifically for workers' rights of survivors. Then we'll have, another breakout room for different gaps in services. So you'll have different spaces that you can show up in. But please register and please share this information with survivors. Don't sit on this. Share this information, share these resources. Too many people don't know what is out there for them, and they need your help in order to get it out there. So, ladies, I appreciate you once again just for being here and being in this space and taking the time out of your days. I have loved our adventures working together, and I look forward just to all of the lives that are going to be impacted and changed. Do you have any like just final words that you want to lift up in this space? Oh, I'm sorry. And Lexia doesn't know it, but she's going to have her own breakout room too. So for those that are younger that come into the space that have dealt with domestic violence issues in their youth, and they want to just tap into the conversation with Lexia. So yeah, I'm excited. Any final words, ladies, before we tap out?
Thank
Thank
you
you.
guys so much for having me. Oh, I'm sorry, I cut someone off. But thank you guys so much for having me. I look forward to seeing you guys next Friday.
Yeah. Thanks for creating the space, Tony, and thank you so much to you and to Lexia in particular for sharing your stories that just really highlight why all of us are doing this work. So thank you for that, and I'm so excited to talk with more folks next Friday evening.
Awesome. Thank you, Alicia, too, just for your words of encouragement and for tapping in. Make sure that you share this with any of your other coworkers. I will be sharing the YouTube link of this recording as well so that you can email it to your base and others. And so we look forward to seeing you all next Friday at 6 p.m. Make sure that you register. And that's it. Adios.
Bye.